Well, welcome back to the channel. My name is Koi, the Knight of Iron, and today I welcome you to my in-between playthroughs Rain World lore analysis. I've just finished with Rivulet, as well as 2 technically Hunter attempts, as well as going for a ton of pearls. This is the most pearls. I've gotten 22 pearls according to my end of game stats. Everything I could have gotten in Rivulet, except for one in Submerged Superstructure, which I'll get later. We've got a lot to go over, so let us begin. My first topic I want to talk about is 5 Pebbles, because 5 Pebbles, I feel like I finally understand what's going on and what has been going on. I feel like, in retrospect, there were clues there all along, and I could have figured it out earlier. However, I didn't. I feel like it took me to the last possible second to fully realize that 5 Pebbles' big thing that he was using so much groundwater for was either personal ascension or crossing himself out, maybe just regular death, I'm not sure. Now, in my playthrough, I asked the question, can an iterator actually ascend? Or are they actually a part of the cycle? And I think I have the answer here, so I'm gonna source some quotes from some pearls. In the conversation he had with 7 Red Suns, he says, "We do die of old age," to which 7 Red Suns responds, "Nothing ever truly dies though, around and around it goes." This is implying iterators are part of the cycle, which makes sense and lines up with what Looks Through the Moon has said as well. I don't know why I assumed they wouldn't, it just seemed like they're so big and they're so smart and big brain. Like, are they supposed to wake up as another iterator, or what, is he gonna wake up as like a slugcat or something, you know? I don't know the rules to the cycles and incarnations, but it's like Looks to the Moon said in another pearl. Like sleep like death, you wake up again. Now next, I guess this begs the question, personal ascension or just death? Like, does it matter which for him, I guess? I don't know. Because Chasing Wind here uses the term personal ascension, seemingly interchangeably with trying to cross themselves out. So it seems like, and would be reasonable to say, and my assumption going forward, is that 5 Pebbles trying to self-delete or self-destruct would be like ascension. I almost don't see how the logic of that makes sense. Maybe I just haven't thought about it enough. I guess the only thing tying an iterator to life is not urges, but the taboo. And without it, I guess they could just ascend straight away. But I guess that's why by design they can't. I think I answered my own question there. Maybe, kind of, I don't know. It's too complicated for me. Next slide. Okay, so this pearl is something that I came back to when thinking about my new perspective on 5 Pebbles, and I realized I definitely should have realized this earlier. I'm just gonna read this section to you. It was not until I met 7 Red Suns and learned about Sliver of Straw that I began to break out of my shell. Most of my old theories went out the window and others evolved once I started talking in those anonymous groups. And then I made a mistake, and I cannot forgive myself for it. I was desperate, angry. I wanted a way out. My way out. And that came at the cost of everything. I thought I could do it quicker. It was taking too long. I almost had it. This pearl is so much more heartbreaking to read through. Knowing what I know now, I should have picked up on it, I could have picked up on it, but I thought I still had so little info on 5 Pebbles that I thought my way out was global ascension, right? The big problem. I just assumed he was working on it. And I assumed that when he said my way out, it was he wants it done his way, you know? I thought he was being super villain with it, but it quite literally is my way out. I should have realized because it's the same phrase he uses to describe my way out. He says there's another way. For me. Not for him. I don't know. It just sucks. I did not anticipate she would. And then I hurt the one person who I thought understood what I was trying to do. So this at least tells me he had some degree of communication already with Looks Through the Moon. Moving on from this dark and heartbreaking subject that I wanted to touch on. We're moving on to the next pearl. It was no secret that my construction was a great point of controversy. Many council members worked vehemently to prevent me from ever coming into being. Their stance was so unfaltering that even after construction was complete, a number of houses still denied transfer and remained behind in her city out of protest. Those of the opposition would never yield to those who supported the so-called apostate superstructure abomination. I don't have the entire context for this, but I have so much more context for this now. Her city. The people he's talking about, the factions he's talking about, the people against his construction were Looks to the Moon's people, because Looks to the Moon was built here first. I'll be honest, when I was playing Artificer and I got this pearl, I don't even know if I knew that, Looks to the Moon was a her, but this is so clearly her city. And I don't know if apostate superstructure abomination is a bit of an overreaction to, Five Pebbles' existence, but I at least have one clue as to why they would be so opposed to Five Pebbles' existence and construction, and why it would be controversial, and it's from Looks to the Moon, about the local aquifer. Building Pebbles so close to me was believed to be a risky choice, but the groundwater was finally deemed as sufficient. It was not a good decision in hindsight. Now that last part is because of what happened to Looks to the Moon, because of what Five Pebbles did. And to be honest, if it wasn't for Looks to the Moon being so close, Five Pebbles might have actually achieved personal ascension, which would have been a crazy alternate universe, like if they were built far enough away from each other. But the point I'm bringing up with this is that I think people were scared of, building a superstructure right next to Looks to the Moon, where they would kind of share the same sort of groundwater. So I don't know if that warrants apostate superstructure abomination, but it is absolutely fascinating and potentially a catalyst point in that sort of conflict. And now I'm just alone, these two pearls I have Five Pebbles versions of, especially because I know more about Five Pebbles now, I am definitely looking forward to getting all the pearls in Artificer. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not. Never mind, I lied. It does not seem fun at all to do that, but you know what? I'm going to do it, and I'm looking forward to when I get his perspective on it all, because it's just been so fascinating so far. Anyways, let's continue. All right, who's next on the slide? Oh my goodness, it's Looks to the Moon. Forgive the terrible quality of the photo, but this is from Hunter, and also basically Survivor, I think, as well. We've got a couple pearls that might explain this sort of situation. She says, most of our processing is outsourced to microbe strata, which need a flow of clean water, or else slag builds up, our processes cease, and eventually we die. It is painful. I am a bit worried that she here might be speaking from experience, because no significant harassment says enjoy the slag keys, excuse the unorthodox delivery method, equipment eroding, etc., etc. Essentially, I think no significant harassment here has given Looks to the Moon a slag key, which has allowed her to access, I guess allowing her to breathe in water, which would be used to clean the rest of her facility of slag, so that she's no longer slowly dying, painfully. And you know what? On top of this, I'm just gonna say it. I didn't realize this when I read it, but I realized it upon a different read. But excuse the unorthodox delivery method, referring to me as a slugcat, but the justification for that is equipment eroding. So I don't know what state no significant harassment is in, but it appears that they cannot send Looks to the Moon a slag key by normal methods, and must resort to unorthodox delivery methods, which is me, a slugcat. Now, next we have microbes are infused into the building materials that lie dormant. They are awakened in response to splintering and separations, initiating a healing cycle that gradually fills the damage. This makes so much sense to me as to why, despite Rivulet being so late in the timeline, Looks to the Moon looks a lot better. The superstructures really are like bodies, and they fix themselves when they're alive and doing well. So Looks to the Moon is getting better over time, and that's why the mechanisms are here to activate, which are improving it compared to what we've just seen before, you see. It makes me very happy to see it, I have to admit. Anyways, who are we just talking about? Oh yes, no significant harassment, who I suspect sent Hunter. Actually, I know sent Hunter. But I suspect might have sent Rivulet as well, or at least someone else has, because in Looks to the Moon's reading of Rivulet's Pearl, we have, this is a highly compressed schematic of an iterator superstructure. One of the linear power rails is highlighted in a diagram with a detailed path of approach outlined. The only one near here would be Five Pebbles. I wonder how he's doing. I did not realize this at the time, but this was my mission. This is my purpose. I was given a map of Five Pebbles, specifically with how to get to where his cell is, which kind of is crazy to me, because until now, I thought I was just going to Five Pebbles to see how he's doing, and then he just decided to give the thing. But now I'm I was clearly sent with that purpose. What if 5 Pebbles said no and was like, no, I want to keep my thing, my cell until I die? Then would I be going on like a heist mission? Because someone, possibly no significant harassment, clearly sent me here with this directive. So very quite wondering about this all. Anyways, now we're going on to some rapid fire thoughts that I've had. The creators. Couple things on this. Being an iterator sounds stupid, and the creators kind of suck for that. In one of the pearls, we are told why the iterators are called iterators, and it's because they endlessly iterate until they maybe eventually happenstance get it right. That kind of sucks as an existence to live through, and especially if you can't ever unlive through it, I guess. I don't know. There's reincarnation, so I hope that iterators that die don't reincarnate as more iterators. That would suck. Anyways, all of this is just a little wild. I don't like, what were they thinking? Well, I can tell you a little bit what they were thinking. They thought the iterators were their gift to the world, and they were meant to ascend everything. One of the pearls describes this, one of the earlier ones that I got, describes the world as being unable to reach enlightenment by itself, being composed of mostly rock, gas, dull-witted bugs, and microbes. They claim to have obligations over it. And all of that is finally clicking for me as like, they want to ascend the microbes, ascend the bugs, ascend the gas, and ascend the rock. They want to ascend the world, and somehow that is the iterator's job. This also begs the question, just on the side, because the Void Sea is eating at the rock and gas and bugs and microbes, presumably at the bottom of the world. And usually when the Void Sea eats at like creatures or at least living things, the living things get crossed out with their ties severed and they ascend. So is it possible that the Void Sea is already like eating away at all that and like the world is ascending just slowly? But then the question becomes, where is all the new dust and rock coming from at the top that keeps building the world back up? The two options are it could be a cycle because it could be coming from wherever the Void Sea is deleting the rock and gas to, or I might be tending to think it's not that, because I would like to believe that if rock and gas can ascend, then like, it just doesn't, I don't know. Like the cosmology of this world is so fascinating, and I still have yet to come up to my own theories or conclusions on what I want to think about it, so. Anyways, what's my last thing? Oh yes, they know what rivers are, which are actually kind of interesting. But yeah, it's mentioned twice, I think. Not only do they have the expression, an iterator drinks a river, but they also in one of their pearls had the expression, across the river and kicked out the boat, referring to how they can't live on the surface world anymore. And they've said this while in Metropolis, which means the iterators were built, which means Looks of the Moon was built, and Looks of the Moon was built long after rivers existed. Like, they just continue to use rivers in their language despite rivers not existing. And because I know for sure, at least, there are several generations of citizens, it's just highly likely that, like, it's probably just a relic from a time long past, you know? Anyways, time for some less organized random thoughts. The Void Sea, pictured here, isn't it great? It's a lot of black, if you can't tell. The Void Sea is an entity. Lord Looks of the Moon says this. And Looks of the Moon also describes matter as leaving the physical world. Again, no clue as to whether it comes back from whatever world it's going to come back, or if the matter is just straight up leaving the physical world. Because that kind of just implies it's ascended like everything else. That's what ascension kind of is. So it would mean that ascending rock and gas are possible, and I don't know. It's just all a bit mess that I'm not quite sure on my own thoughts on, despite sitting here and thinking about it for a long time. All right, next we have Pipeyard is north of the farm array. Isn't that interesting? I guess also worth mentioning here, there are 47 drill sites here, and they were obviously drill sites for void fluid. They made like void fluid baths. That's kind of crazy. Honestly, the baths kind of sound cool. Just go to a bath and then like you slip into heaven or something. That's crazy. Anyways, nothing else much to say here except look at this. 17 axes, 15 spoked wheels. This is a new pearl that I got, referring to this person. One thing I noticed upon my reread of all the pearls is that they donated to their local iterator project, Never Dwindling Righteousness, and they were of the House of Braids. Now, I don't know if Never Dwindling Righteousness was like in or under construction when they were being built, and it's like, oh, I'm contributing to the construction. Or I think more likely, Never Dwindling Righteousness probably like existed already, and when 17 Axes left, they just gave their stuff away to them. But the reason I've got like a question mark around House of Braids is because I'm pretty sure the House of Braids is what I've seen in 5 Pebbles, pictured here in Artificer. Which does mean, or somewhat confirmed to me, maybe at least, that houses are not like limited to like per iterator. The House of Braids, there could be House of Braids in 5 Pebbles, House of Braids in Never Dwindling Righteousness. For all I know, House of Braids on Looks to the Moon. Maybe houses controlled like multiple iterators, or maybe there were multiple houses on all iterators. I'm not sure, but I thought it was notable because, you know, House of Braids is seeming to come up a bit more than anything else, at least. Okay, this next one is just a little bit of a fun theory, not a crazy ton of evidence. There's an entire pearl dedicated to a genome for a slug to clean the inside of pipes. Now in this pearl, we get a whole lesson on what purposed organisms are. And by the end of it, Moon tells us we're probably descended from one. Now I can't help but think, I'm a bit of a slug myself. Slug cat, really, but I'm a bit of a slug myself. I'm sort of part of this ecosystem, and I go through pipes a lot. Now I assume if I'm any bit, like, lubricated, I might be cleaning the pipes that I go through, in a sort of weird way. And I almost wonder and can't help but think if that's maybe the origin of slugcats, because after all, this entire world and its creatures were created by the creators, basically. There is little primal fauna left. If I don't directly serve a purpose for the iterator, I am probably descended from something that more directly served a purpose for the iterator superstructures in which I live in and surround. Anyways, next is we're going to look at these. This is the last part of my little lore video for today. But also, like, I don't know, it's just so fun because we get so many more new screens that Looks to the Moon is showing us. And you see here that we have the survivor symbol in the middle. We've got the food symbol in the top right, the socialized symbol in the bottom right. Presumably out of frame, the other two solid connections here are the lust and murder symbols or whatever. But in a weird sort of way, I almost feel like this is like my brain, or even if it's not like directly meant to be that. I mean, clearly 5 Pebbles, at least with like Monk and Survivor, he can access my karma and he can change/affect it. So potentially this is what she's doing here or something. I'll also point out how much of like a tangled web and sort of net that this is, which does remind me there is a pearl which has like an analogy talking about karma and us being tied in as sort of like a net. And obviously these seem like pretty strong ties. It definitely reminds me of these being like bonds of sorts that are like tying me to life, kind of. Because these are the things that generally tie me to life. Not a ton else that I have to say over here other than, as you can see between these two slides, it's flashing, like flashing red and stuff. Interestingly, it kind of flashes red like the karma symbols do at a gate when I'm not high enough karma. So I feel like that's sort of like metaphorical as well, like metaphorically keeping me here. I can't move on because the karma is this. I mean, ironically, at this stage, I'm high enough karma I can ascend, but I assume this is just generally. Our next screen is quite interesting because we have Hunter right here, a little Hunter profile picture. This seems like basically just pulling up a file. This seems like an interface, like a file explorer, like pulling up files. I'm going to guess that at the top there, that's a no significant harassments sort of, I guess, profile picture, because in the dialogue here, what I noticed is there's obviously a bit of like info on Hunter down here, but also Looks to the Moon seems to get some info on like no significant harassment was the one that sent me, etc., etc. So I'm thinking that could be representative of them. And notably, the symbol's also in the bottom right over there, as well as an orange symbol. And oh goodness, I don't have a pointer right now, but there's also a red symbol that seems like it's got a sun on it. Could potentially be 7 red suns. At the bottom there, we've got 5 circles. One of them's bigger than the others, but 5 pebbles maybe? Well, let's see, because our next thing is the mass rarefaction cell. And Looks to the Moon seems to be able to get some info off of this, but it looks like that thing that I just said could be 5 Pebbles profile picture is like up there. Looks to the Moon is like getting info on 5 Pebbles and what 5 Pebbles said and his intentions with the cell off of this. So I assume that up there is like what Five Pebbles said. And so I'm assuming that's sort of Five Pebbles' profile picture, which is kind of funny and crazy. Also, I should say, it looks like it's like, there's also a blue one that's shown up here on the side. That might be Chasing Wind down there and like the bottom right, because I know Chasing Wind is blue. Also interesting, I don't know if have I heard No Significant Harassment speak? Because now my guess is that No Significant Harassment would be green based off of this profile picture. At least their speech would. Anyways, enough of that. We're moving on to this. Oh yeah, I have no idea. I'm sorry guys, I'm not a genius. I mean, I'm happy to see there's a lot of overseers around. I think we're approaching the end. Let's see what else we have. Oh yes, I talked about this. I figured this out while I was actually playing, but look, there's like a game similar to Dominoes. They've got the kill symbol like aligned together, and interestingly it's yellow and blue. And interestingly, Moon's overseers are the ones that are projecting this, right? We've got two of these seeming dominoes out and played. And if I move on to this next screen, this is when I actually figured out it kind of looks like dominoes. Interestingly, what I didn't notice is that Five Pebbles overseers are projecting this, which makes me think, and is now from henceforth my headcanon, that Five Pebbles is and was able to at least somewhat communicate back. I mean, they have the overseers, right? The overseers that were at the very least. And look, his overseers are here. There has to be a way Five Pebbles can sort of like signal intention. But look at this. Like, Five Pebbles is playing back. They're playing with each. Like, am I reading this wrong, or are Five Pebbles and Looks to the Moon playing dominoes with each other? Okay, I don't know if it's dominoes. I've never actually played like a real game of dominoes, but domino-like game. It would definitely seem like they're playing it. And honestly, that makes the ending way more happy and wholesome for me. Anyways, thanks for watching my lore video. I don't know if I really like theorized as much in this one. I think I still did. And talked about my thoughts and stuff. I've been doing a lot of theorizing as I've been getting pearls, obviously, so that's why this one might feel different for me. And I've gotten a lot of answers to things I've questioned in the past. All that said, I am so excited to jump into Spearmaster next. All I've heard from this is that there's a lot of good lore in this one, and I love me some lore, so hey, I'll see you in the next one. Farewell.